behind the throne. My name is Mario, the person behind the throne.
And I think it's ready. Yay, good morning. Good morning, Raisa. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning from like probably the grayest day of a gray November from Finland.
Is
As
that
you
so
can,
bad?
it's really bad. It's like yeah, it's raining. It's not even snowing. It's raining. So
Okay.
whatever snow we had is now gone.
So that means that there is the big, very famous slush.
Yes, the
Okay.
slush has arrived.
The typical November slush in Finland, right? So basically, for those that don't know what it is, it snows a lot, and then the temperature goes up a little bit, so everything melts, and then it's like the slush is this mud on the street everywhere. It is like, yes, that is
Yeah, and
not the best
basically
feeling.
it's like the sky and the ground are the exact same color, so it's gray.
That's a very grim view. It's it's very vivid now in my mind, like the image of like gray
I
hair.
paint a picture. Yeah.
Very well, I would say. Okay, so thank you for coming to the show today. For anyone who don't know you, I'm talking to Raisa Kullberg from Funcom. So I have this week a problem with the audio AI that was generating the AI description of or bio of my guest. So I have it ready. I have the text, but this time instead of having my phone talking to the world, it's gonna be my voice. So I'm gonna read your bio, Raisa. Let's start now.
Let's
Raisa
go.
Kullberg is a seasoned localization expert with a deep passion for bridging cultural and linguistic gaps in the gaming industry. With over a decade of experience, she has become a key figure in ensuring video games resonate with players worldwide, regardless of language or cultural background. Currently serving as the localization lead at Funcom, Raisa plays a pivotal role in crafting immersive gaming experience that feel authentic to global audiences. From overseeing translation workflows to managing cultural adaptation processes, her work ensures that Funcom's game connect deeply with players across diverse markets. So Raisa's journey in localization began with her love for languages and storytelling, driving her to specialize in the unique challenges of video game localization. Her expertise lies in 3 points: developing localization strategies tailored to narrative heavy and complex games, two, managing multilingual teams and collaborating with developers to maintain creative intent, and three, balancing the technical and creative aspects of localization, particularly in adapting humor, tone, and culturally sensitive content. Beyond her professional achievements, Raisa is a vocal advocate for diversity and representation in games. She believes in the transformative power of localization, not just to expand reach, but to foster inclusivity and understanding among players from different cultures. So, well, that's it. So, join us as we explore Raisa's point of view on localization and especially the AI impact that the impact that AI is going to have on localization. Welcome
That's
once
it.
again, right, Raisa. How did you like it?
Thank you. Thank you. It was very fancy. It was like way fancier than what I view my job. But yeah, thank you very much.
That's kind of my
A
job,
lot of
to
big
make it.
words.
This is my job to make it sound like fancier, better. In general, most people when they listen to this one, they just say, "Hey, can you send me the audio? Can you send me the text? Because I'm gonna use it in my personal website or
Yeah,
something."
that's going on LinkedIn. Yeah.
It's going on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Exactly. That's a general feeling. But I started this. I call it triptycho, as we use it in opera, but triptych of episodes talking about localization, especially the impact that the AI has on localization. I know you have a lot to say about this, like everyone on localization, right? I think I haven't met yet anyone in localization that doesn't have a lot to say on this topic. There
Mm.
are the ones like Nico. I already recorded the first episode. Is going to go live tomorrow. So by the time this goes out, it's like 1 week ago or something like that. But that he claims that AI translation is now better than human translation. There are those on the completely opposite side of the spectrum saying that it's still absolute terror and there is no point in doing it because like you need to change so much that then it doesn't make sense financially. So and it's not really there yet. There are the people in between say, yeah, I see how it's developing, and probably in a couple of years it's going to replace the translators. Maybe not all of them, but some of them, the majority of them, the minority of them. There are so many point of view. So I'm here because I would like to know your opinion, right, on this important topic. So, and I would like to start with about how AI tools are changing the speed and scale of localizations, right? So AI has made localization faster, of course, and more scalable. Now, debatable whether it's really true or not, but when it comes to capturing cultural nuances and humor, do you think AI can match the creative depth of human translators? So how do you see this balance evolving, especially in the next few years, right? So let's start with this, which can be generic and specific. It depends on how you want to take it. The stage is yours.
Well, I think the short answer is no, because to me, translation and more localization is a creative vocation or a profession. If you work with freelance translators, they are more of the creative type than like a business type, for example. And I think because language is everything. Language is how we view the world. Language is how we conceptualize the world. And language
Yeah.
kind of forms with us from when we kind of start understanding language as a very small child to our deathbed, really. So I don't really see how all of that could go into AI and be relevant there, because the connections that you have to make, especially with localization, translation, if you're looking for word translation with kind of poor grammar, sure. But if you're looking for localization where the experience is actually immersive, then I don't think AI, I don't know if it can get there, but it's definitely not. It's
Okay.
just language as a concept is so massive that there's no way to input that into AI so that AI would match human skills and human understanding of language and context and concepts. And yeah, because I just the other day I was thinking like the kind of the hardest things that we've done, for example, on Conan Exiles is usually the poems, because they can
Sorry,
be
can you repeat? Is usually what? Sorry?
poems, because
Poems.
you're either looking for like rhyming, and a lot of the time they can be a little dirty, so you're looking for innuendo, and so AI just can't make those connections. It just can't. It doesn't know when to be cheeky and when to be serious, unless with every line you have a note, this is this. But then that's impossible. Who's going to do that? Who's going to make those notes for AI? I mean, in that time, you just translate yourself. So I don't really see that. In my experience, it doesn't work. But, it's always evolving constantly. But yeah, right now, yeah, no. I
Okay.
know, and translation is one of those industries where AI is come in hot and heavy. That's why it's so talked about in the community. And that's why, like you said, everyone has an opinion, because it is one of those things that executives would gladly not pay that much for and would gladly have it automized and be like, let's not deal with humans on this. Let's deal with a computer. It's the same with art. I think the art community has been very like in general, but also in games, that's another thing where a lot of artists, again, a creative type, I feel like the AI discussion really penetrated that section of games where it's like, could we do this with AI? Do we need artists?
There's a lot there that you said that I would like to go over. So there is like, let's start with what you guys are doing in Funcom, especially in when you were talking about the poems, right? So starting with that, I can tell you that last year, as a present for my wife for her birthday, I decided to create a poem for her, and I decided to challenge ChatGPT in making a poem for her. Um, so I made one that it took me basically 2 weeks to put together. And with ChatGPT, it took me, of course, like it's a matter of hours, but it took me like, I would say 2 hours if I had to quantify, because I had to, of course, to tell ChatGPT everything about my wife, right? How she is, how she looks, what is important for us, how she takes care of us, blah, 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 blah. So I, let's say 2 hours of work with ChatGPT, and my work was better, right? It took me 2 weeks though. So one can say, yeah, but it took you 2 weeks, bro, compared to 2 hours, right? But it was better. It was like, I didn't know even how to. So if you ask me where was it better, I would tell you, I don't know. It just was human more. Like it was really, let me tell you, what ChatGPT did was amazing, was really, really good. But mine was just as had a different flow rather than the paragraphs, right? They were flowing rather than being more like individual silences saying something about her and rhyming perfectly. He did a better job than I did, especially with the rhyming. But mine was like more had a heart in it, like a
Yeah.
little bit more. Um, so, but people could tell you, right? Like let me just plain devil's advocate. Someone could just reply by saying, "Hey, but how many times you have poems in your Conan Exile or in your game? So how often does it happen that this like or the jokes? How many jokes there are in there? Can't we?" So that's probably what I would say. Can we just translate? So the rest of the game is like, let's say the remainder 70% of the game or 80% of the game I can translate it with AI, which is doing like, or localize it is better to say about localization. So we can localize it with AI, and then that 30% maybe we can do it with humans, or we can train the AI to do it like at a similar level, which it's one of the bold statements that there are out there right now. And actually, if you saw like the episode with Miko, and Miko says it's better, right? It's at human level, and often better. uh, that of course. So what would you say if someone would told you this? Yeah, but let's just let the translators do this job for the 30% of your game in which there are poems and jokes, and then have the reminder translated by AI or localized by AI.
I don't disagree with the fact that a lot of the text in games is recyclable. You know, menus, settings, that doesn't really change. Audio settings are audio settings, regardless, unless you really go for like a custom text there. So, I mean, it's the same with the whole general idea of AI. I'd give AI the monkey work, the 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 tasks that I don't really want to do. I'm sure a lot of the game translators, when translating menu text for the 100th time, would prefer having AI do that. But then when it comes to the actual, in Finnish we call it the bread text, the, the bread of the text, where you go for the lore, you go for describing things that are in the game. So you have to kind of see the object to be able to properly describe it or a picture of it. So then, I mean, I do see the use of AI in the tasks that translators are probably fed up anyway. One where I would love to see it is with the platform specific terminology, which is every game localizer's pain in the butt. because it's those change, but they're very rigid in that sense that you have to have the newest documentation and you have to match it. Otherwise, you don't pass submissions to the platforms. So it would be great if AI would kind of flag those things for you. Like, hey, you're using the wrong word for the controller. This is what I found in the documentation. You should use this. And obviously, you could still check that, but that will be useful. It's just that it feels like no one is approaching this from that point of view, where it's like, are these those mundane tasks in localization that we could use this for? But they're kind of going for the creative part of it. And I think that's where the resistance comes from. If the conversation had started with like, okay, is there something in localization that is part of your job, but you kind of don't like? Start from there, not go with like, oh, AI can like figure out the history of the world and the history and the connections between cultures and connections between concepts and do your job. I think it would have been way easier if, or like less flammable if we had gone with, okay, is there something that the AI could be good for? And I think now the conversation kind of started at the wrong point. And that's why we're at a point where at least my LinkedIn is filled with these long posts about like, this was AI translated, look how shit it is. And it's like, okay, but yeah. So yeah, we're kind of and now we've cornered ourselves into this thing where it's like, it's automatically bad. And then and as if the discussion, like we've already had the discussion and this is the end result, whereas maybe there is use for it, but it's very specific. I mean, I would love to not to have to tell a translator that they made a mistake that cost my company money because they didn't check the documentation. That'd be great if I could put that task on AI and be able to trust it. So yeah, but we have kind of painted ourselves in a bit of a corner, and now there is this very strong view that you have to be against it or you have to be for it.
It's the usual thing where embrace it all or reject it all. Like one of the topics that really grinds my gear.
And it's
in
the
modern
state
world.
of the world. Yeah,
it's really with whatever. If you're left, all the people in the right, they say the wrong thing, and vice versa. If you are for AI, you are all in or nothing. It's just like that it really irritates me. There is one thing, they're actually like, let me go over this. Like, do you believe, because that's a belief that I have, right? So I'm actually making it. Do you believe that there is ignorance about localization, and that's also could be one of the main driver for certain statements? Meaning, when I say ignorance, is that one thing is knowing what localization is, right? So I read the description. What is localization? What's the difference between localization and translation? Translation is word for word and blah blah blah, and localization is actually trying to localize it, so to like local, like place, try to make it resound, resonate with people that live in a different place. So it's not word by word, but putting your creativity and trying to get it. So the feeling I have is that for such strong statements, for people actually that work on it, there must be an underlying, an atavic sort of ignorance of what is the depth of localization, what are the nuances, what a human translator does really provide, right? Because maybe most people, they have an opinion based on what they think it is, right? And that also resonates with what you were saying before, when you say that there are people that they want to save, want to cut costs, and they're trying to cut costs. That's one thing that I know, that I when I note here, because you said there are people that, and of course, my job as the founder of Magic Partner, is to do the selection process for service providers, not only localization, but also QA, player support, art, co-development, etc., etc. And one of the things that I noticed the most is that, so I basically I help game developer. I go to game developer and tell him, do you want to save money? Yes, no. I can do this process for you. I can negotiate for you, and I'm gonna make you save money. So that's my job, and I know really how to. And I see that the reason underlying, as I said before, that ignorance in how to select a new partner, and that goes in line with the ignorance of what localization actually is. How is localization with a human, and how is localization with AI? What are the nuances there? I noticed that and resonates with what you were saying before. People are just trying to cut costs. Localization. Maybe I can waive the localization card and just do like some type of localization. What do you think about that?
The ignorance is real. And I do think that there is a definitely kind of like a void in understanding the difference between translation and localization. Because a lot of people, you put in a couple of words into Google Translate, and to you, if those come out correct, there's the assumption that, okay, Google Translate works. Why would I need a human to do that when it did that in less than a second? But localization, and my favorite thing about localization is the fact that you can get it's one of my things where I really like finding out how sayings and these is it a saying? Phrases, these type of things that you say that are culturally, like some sayings are global. There are sayings that you translate it word for word and it applies because the culture has that saying, but not a lot of them. And that's usually kind of like it's kind of like maybe there's Western sayings that apply. But one of my favorite things is kind of like translating sayings word for word and have them make no sense in kind of like my speech and in everyday world. And then figuring out what is the actual saying in Finnish that means the exact same thing, that conveys the same message. And I think that's a super easy way to demonstrate the difference between translation and localization. Because an English saying, unlocalized, if just translated, might not mean anything. Because it's like, it carries no meaning. It has no context. It has no kind of attachment to the culture. And the culture very likely has a saying that means the exact same thing, but it's a completely different, situation.
And there is a big component. Sorry. There is a big component for culturalization, right? That's what people also call culturalization. Is not, as you said. I think this one, what Loc is and what translation is a little bit is clear. I think to me, to most people. The point is just like the nuances of like having the AI translated, and because there is that component for culturalization, exactly what you were saying. That joke translate is not even about. There is a joke. John is a moron, right? Or let me swear here. Like, because I think this is like, stop talking, motherfucker. Stop talking, motherfucker. If you translate motherfucker in Italian, it means jack shit. Like, it doesn't mean shit, right? Motherfucker, like you say, like, what? We don't say that. But it's not even that. It's not even finding that the role of localization actually find the correspective, like the correspondence of that. How do you call it? You can call it pezzo di merda, piece of shit. That in that case actually, but if you call it motherfucker, still would translate it with pezzo di merda. Now, what the human does also recognizes that and knows that in the context actually makes sense. I can translate with pezzo di merda, right? If I go like, let's say ChatGPT could translate it with pezzo di merda. Sorry for all this swear. I think I never swear so much in an episode of my show, but
that's fine.
No, but it's perfect because
I speak like a sailor in my everyday
good
life. Yeah.
When I'm off this recording camera, oh my goodness, My wife hates it, but it's okay. But she's still with me. But the translator will actually do the job of the culturalization and will actually think, wait a second, pezzo di merda. In this case, works or doesn't work. Because who's speaking, because I see it on screen, who's speaking is a guy from the suburb, from like the favela, if it's a Brazilian movie, or from like the suburb of Chicago, whatever. If it's a, and in that case, those guys, they don't use that, but they use like another term, and they say figemuk. I don't know. For example, if they want to take a Napolitan accent at that point, and that is what to me is one of the core difference. A translator, localizator, even though we don't use this word, but a localizator to me does that job, recognizing what the context is, and actually applying not even just a good localization, but like understanding the scenario, understanding the cutscene, understanding the context, understanding the place, understanding if it's from the middle of the city or from outside the city or from like so that is what I think a localizator does. Like, see, so the one thing I would just like to say, I think in localization there is one thing that always been missing for me. That is like giving the translators the chance to see the game. Too often, localizators are working in silos, like just to receive the text and they need to translate it. I think translators should play the game.
Oh,
I remember this, my big experience of when I was working at Nintendo, like we're talking about 20 years ago, but also working for Nintendo as a service provider, like at service provider, I remember they had this beautiful thing of like, for 2 days, here's your game. We pay, they include the cost of that. You play the game, so you know my game, and then you're going to translate it. And that was key.
well, that is basically what LQA does to a
True.
big point. But that then comes back, we can go back to the ignorance, which I don't necessarily think is malicious ignorance. It's more of like, I also see, because the game industry is very international. I'd say most companies have different nationalities of people. And those people usually have one shared language that might not be everyone's first language, but there is a language that they speak. A lot of game companies in Finland are English speaking, even if there's a lot of Finns there. So I also think that specifically in games industry, that's an important point, because this is something that you might not think about if you speak more languages than one. And if for you, using multiple languages in everyday life is easy. So you might not think that your player might not actually speak English. Their only contact point to the game is the translated version. So they don't go back and forth between the versions and do kind of comparison and see like, did the translation miss something? They view it as one version, just the German version. And then based on that, then there's that kind of feeling of like, am I immersed? Do I feel like this was made for German, or what is this just the translated version of the game? But I think that in games industry, that's always a bit of a light bulb moment when people kind of remember that not everyone speaks multiple languages and they only have one reference point. So yeah, I think that's one part of it, where there's a big space for just being a spokesperson for localization and just speaking about the importance of it and making these everyday examples where it's like not every person have moved countries for a job and can work in multiple languages. And I've only worked in the games industry, so I can only speak about that. But I do think that for a lot of people, that's kind of like, oh, right, yeah. And they're like, yeah, I have friends back home who would use the localized version and they wouldn't be comfortable with English. And they don't use English in everyday life. Maybe they studied in school but hated it and don't really care for it. And that's why we do it. That's why we do localized games, so that we have a bigger audience. Because a lot of the IPs that we use have a global attraction, but if we only used English, we'd be very limited to who we can make games for. So, yeah, I think that with games, that's kind of a thing, and I've dealt with that throughout my career. Just kind of making those light bulb moments happen, where it's like, especially in Finland, because Finland is very kind of perforated with English, and we use subtitles on TV instead of dubbing. So English is very much here. And like you see ads on TV or you see ads on paper, and we use a lot of English words. So yeah, my nieces and nephews speak English, way better than I did at that age. So it's a big, yeah, it's, but you have to remember that it's not like your language is still your identity, and you have your mother tongue that if you allow me to be a bit of poet, that your mother tongue is in your heart, and that's your identity, that's who you are, and you should always be able to prefer that over a learned language. Because I feel like mother tongue is okay, sure, you learn it, but it's still, it's kind of in your DNA in a way. And so then to kind of take that away and be like, no, come into this world where there's just one language and everyone just, use that. There's also, yeah, like you said in the intro, it's the inclusivity. Like who are we to force people to use just one language when they're, yeah.
I like what you said about that, about the language being ingrained in your DNA, or actually being part of the DNA. That really kind of reverberates here. Like the moment you said it, like it's very interesting, because it's true. Like I had my experience with video games, that I played video games. So when I was a kid, of course, in Italian, I didn't speak a word of English in Italy. Education system, special teaching languages was and still is quite bad. But I always played games in Italian. Then when I started learning, when I moved out of Italy when I was 19, started speaking more and more English. Then I started playing games in English only for almost 2 decades. And in the last 5 years, I returned to my original language for whatever reason. I think there is something there that it makes me enjoy a little bit more, especially if a story with a lot of text, with a lot of like audio. So I like it. I like it very much. And still I have a problem, because I think Italian per se has a problem, because we have a big history in dubbing games. So there are the dubbers, the school of dubbing, which was once regarded as the best in the world, where like a big dubbers from the States were coming to Italy to learn. But it became very theatrical, so it's very much so. Even when you are in games, you have someone that is say, "Darling, give me that mug with coffee," and then you're like, who the heck speaks like that? Like no one. But in general, like I also got to be back into the original, into my own language, and I find pleasure in it. So I started paying even more attention to the mistakes of localization that are still there, even though we have humans doing it. There are still some mistakes
Yeah,
here and
for
there,
sure. Yeah.
or things that I really wish they weren't there. But there's another thing that you said before, and about I remember that you talked about your LinkedIn, right? Being you see the same messages. Oh my God, I'm on a crusade with that. I'm on a crusade. So you're just
You're just
like,
commenting everything.
no, it's just that, oh my goodness, I can't. And here I'm going somewhere with AI, right? Because this is a reflex on AI. And then my fear is that we're going to have the same results in having game translated like that or localized by AI. My fear we're gonna lose all the beautiful nuances that are given by the pure by human really taking their heart. I like this game. Think about the Nintendo video games that they spend so much time and money into localizing them, being very picky about every single word. Oh my goodness, that is an amazing job. Nintendo, thank you for being Nintendo. And also Funcom, I think also. I played like Conan Exile. It was also, I think it was a really good job. Sometimes I play games that are like a better job, but my fear is that we're gonna have a LinkedIn effect. Look at the LinkedIn. So there are two things there. One is AI. One is also this big ghostwriter that they tell you, "I'm gonna teach you how to write," and everyone, especially the CEOs, are jumping into the stories and then into these courses, right? Or actually believe in the story, jump into the course in 2 days. I'm gonna teach you how to write on LinkedIn. And now everyone is writing a link. Before we did now, it's like everyone, and the standard is boost like boom sentence. My company just reached 100,000 followers, or I just made $10,000 in 2 days. Here's how I did it. Column. And of course, because of like the limitation on LinkedIn, that then you don't see anything. You need to go and press read. That counts as a click. That counts as an impression. That counts as a goddamn no. But everyone writes the same. Even the people that sometimes, there are some people that I love out there on LinkedIn. They still all write the same way. And the result is that I don't read them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they
Don't
all
wanna.
write the same fucking thing. Recruiting a talent is important. Here's how I do it. And then you don't read it. I don't want to go impress. I don't want to go impress more. No, you just tell me. You have 4 lines there. Just tell me something. I don't want to press more. I will press more if you make like a long thing, like when you really put your head. But one is written that way that everyone is writing, and two, I want you to tell me something. And then if you see it's really interesting, then I will read more. That is annoying. And that is like a standardization of writing on LinkedIn. My fear is that with localization done that way, we're gonna run same risk. And then people, okay, let me just play it in English anyway. It's gonna be like done in the same. I don't know. Maybe it makes sense what I said. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Tell me, is that just so stupid what I said?
I just think that that's kind of like, isn't that in a way part of the how a social media platform, like, is it that kind of one of the phases that a social media platform goes through? It's like, because people adapt to something, they're like, oh, this new thing, then first it's original content and it's people like being themselves, and then it becomes about data, it becomes about analyzing data, it becomes being about engagement and branding and all of that. And then someone tells you this is how you write a post that gets you engagement, and somehow engagement is the ultimate value that we're going for, and no one dares to go against that. So then everyone follows suit, and that's how we end up where we are. That's why I really love the parody accounts in LinkedIn who make a complete, joke about the fact that, yeah. But yeah, LinkedIn has crossed that threshold where it has become like, it has entered that phase where it's only about the clicks. It's not about connection anymore. It's not about like growing your professional network. It's only about like getting clicks for your AI written posts or AI guided posts.
Yeah.
And I think that probably happens to all platforms. I don't know how to fight that. I'm very much against social media, so I'm no expert.
Okay.
But I feel like we've seen that. It happened in Facebook. Like suddenly every ad on Facebook and even like a personal post that suddenly completely disappeared, kind of started following the same format. So, yeah.
Yeah. Poor Tommy Huttola. I don't know if you know, it's the CEO of Cosmic Lounge. And like last week at RovioCon, I go to his panel. was very interested about like AI tools, et cetera, et cetera. So you know that Cosmic Labs are working very, very hard on with AI on releasing more and more puzzle games. So they have their own proprietary tool, et cetera, et cetera. Great work, man. And so, and then I asked at the end the question, and I actually mentioned this thing about LinkedIn just to refer like with AI, and he actually started answering, okay, thank you for pointing out that my way of writing on LinkedIn is shit. I will thank you. I take a note. I will change. I was like, oh my god, like I made a fool of myself. No, the guy's like, thank you for pointing out because I didn't know that he was also right. I didn't notice it, right? And it was like, oh, poor him and poor me also because I felt stupid really to say
No,
that
but
word.
we've also entered this like thing where everyone's a content creator. Not everyone is a content creator. Not everyone's a writer. Not everyone's good with words. But
Yeah.
because we live in this world where you need to brand yourself, you need to create content. And I'm like, who am I creating content for? Who gives a shit what I ate for lunch? I care, but who else should care? So that's, but you know, that's a whole other topic, how much I don't like social media.
Yes, let's switch back to
Yeah.
localization then,
So
because I know you're gonna
cut.
go there.
But yeah, but I think that's just the world now.
Yeah, it's a world. Let's then, you know what? Let's talk about the future of localization jobs in AI driven world. So, you know, like because we AI handling more of the heavy lifting in localization. So, what new skills or roles do you think localization experts will need to adopt, and especially we will see a shift towards more AI trainer or localization QA roles. So, and also with that, and then this last thing, I know it's a lot as a question, it's a long question, but how do we ensure that as AI advances, the human touch in localization, like emotional tone, cultural sensitivity, blah, 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 is not lost? And how do you see the future of this in the next 2, 5, 10 years? You define it.
I mean, I'm just trying to think like, wouldn't the AI trainer still have to be a linguist? So, you know, there's your, like, your language skills will always be useful. That's like putting money in the bank, learning a language. So I haven't really thought about it that much because I had a pilot project for adding a language into a game, old game with shit ton of text, which is not the best thing to use for a pilot. And it kind of failed. Not even kind of failed, it failed. So
How did he fail?
well, it went from these big promises of like, we can do the whole thing. I had a vendor who offered to do the whole thing, which at this point was like 600,000 words with AI. And we can add a language into a game and reach a new audience. Sure, let's try it. But then, so we went from the whole thing with AI. So we solve a few problems, answer questions. Suddenly the questions are super specific. It's like, oh, we don't know like for dialogue, we don't know who's speaking. Oh, who is this aimed at? And it's like, well, we don't have that data because we didn't design this to be done with AI. So we don't have that documentation. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's fine. We'll solve it. A few weeks go by. They come back with, we can't quite get there with AI only. So how about we do the translation with AI, but then we have humans proofread it? And I was like, okay, this is probably adding cost and time. Yes, but you know, it's proofing, which is cheaper. Right. Okay. So then they come back in a few weeks and it has completely shifted. They're like, we tried to have a human look at the AI translated text and it's gibberish. It makes no sense. Even in a way, out of context, because at this time they were working with text files only. They had the game, but I don't know how, I mean, we didn't implement anything into the game yet. So the translator has the human has the reference point of, okay, this is the game, and this would be the text that will go in. And just reading it, it's like, it makes no sense. So where you end up is having to redo everything, because none of it is useful. Especially like if we're talking about like lore text, mostly. None of it is useful. And that's most of the game. So, and it was like, okay, we tried it. Yep. But then obviously that sparked the whole thought process of like, how can that improve and what AI could be used for? And that's what I mentioned earlier. Do you cross your fingers in Italy? Is that
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, that'd be like a cultural thing. I'm sure not all cultures do this.
No.
And
We
it
actually,
means meaning the same thing.
because actually we kind of like that, we say it in tengo le dita incrociate, I keep my finger crossed, right? But we rather use like swear words. Like we say, for example, we say in culo alla balena. So in the whale's ass, like to
Italian really is the dirtiest language.
way the dirtier.
Have I ever told you that thing that happened at Trovio? We had this Italian translator. We had some sort of a promotion, and it was about the big bird. You know, there's this big bird. And it was something about him destroying everything. But the translation that came from him, I think it was a guy, was basically like, here's a big cock for you to destroy everything.
Ooh.
We had a bit of a panic moment to replace that text. It went live for a hot second. And yeah, I think there were repercussions for that person because they knew what they were doing. They knew that it was an Angry Birds game, you know. But it was something about like a big bird being an euphemism and then him just going for it.
Probably use the word uccellone.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Which it definitely is. Of course, grammatically, uccellone means big bird, but no one uses uccellone unless it refers to that one thing.
Yeah. And because of that and few other experiences, I've determined that Italian is the dirtiest language.
It definitely is.
Yeah. It's filled with those. It's like a minefield.
Okay. Let's try
Yes.
to get from there. I will try to get from there. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Raisa. So you know, here for everyone who's listening, that was like a big thing. My computer went boom, and it's a Mac, So those people that say like Mac never, like it was a big thing. So we had to interrupt it. So Raisa was talking for a while. So so sorry for that thing. But let's then ask. Let's see if there is a need for cutting, editing. You guys are not gonna see it, but there's gonna be probably some editing here. So one thing that I was while we were talking about, you know, I just managed to get a hold of the situation again. We and Raisa we're talking.
Yeah, I
about
mean, I was afraid I need to take over. That now I'm the host now, and I'm just gonna call a colleague or something to come in and be like, "You want to be on a podcast?" I just took over one.
It never happened to me before, but hey, like, you know, it's all good now. But like we were just a few reminiscences about like the, you know, experiences about translations, localization done by Peter, by people. Especially you told me about that in at Rovio, they translated like big bird with uccellone, something like that. And uccellone in Italian means big bird, but no one will use big bird if not referring to something else. Of course, you can imagine. And it was like an interesting story. So we're talking about that. But so let me get back to the core of our conversation. I think we need to also wrap it up. It's almost the end of our conversation for today. But if I, you know, if you had like a crystal ball in front of you and you put like a nice pointy hat,
A lot of numbers.
yes, like, and then the crystal ball, there are all the electric things, you know, Tesla style. And then I would ask you, so where do you think we're going? Is it 2 years, is 5 years, is 10 years, is never, it's you hate it, you love it? What is your general feeling about where are we going with that? And then also because like there are you by the time that this video goes live, you probably would have watched already the first episode from Miko. Marcus, I love him. He's a great guy. He's trying to do something with this company, Uncanny AI is called. He's doing like localization, fully AI. He says that they finally games that can be localized in 100 languages and the cost of like a croissant in the morning. And at least his main point is finally you can localize in 100 languages and it costs you nothing rather than so for me that is the core of our conversation. And I think I really believe that at some point we're going to get there the way it get very close to being human like localization. We're not there yet. But what is your point, especially for the future?
Well, right now, there is a concern that a lot of linguists will leave the field because the bombardment of AI is so massive. And I hope that it doesn't turn into like universities and other schools kind of ending programs for translation and all of that. That is a big worry because we will lose a massive amount of brain power and experience if that happens. I don't think it's avoidable. I don't think we will suddenly go back to pen and paper and be like, what AI? That thing. But I do think that, my biggest, like my hope is that there is going to be a happy medium, that there's going to be a way that we can use AI to do the monkey work and do the work that can be easily kind of coded into it so that there's not much room for error, but it can be the backup. But I really hope that we don't lose the human connection from translation and localization, because language is about humans. Language is not about computers or AI. Language is a human interaction. So maybe I'd be brave enough to say that it's never going to happen because of that. But, we're so attached to our screens now, and the world has changed so much in the last 20 years where the human interaction is less and less. But yeah, what else can you hope except like a healthy balance and us being able to harness the AI in a way where we can spend more time being creative and have AI do
The other stuff.
yeah.
So you think there's gonna be from the beginning of like your speech here, you said that you're afraid of a little bit of a runaway from actually translators, localizator, artists of localization, running away from these jobs, from this industry, and then that at some point we're gonna be forced sort of to use it because like there's not gonna be enough translator left. I don't know.
I'm afraid of that because there is like, you can't ask for people to hang around and do professional translations for peanuts and have to work with AI if they don't want to. I mean, it's unreasonable. And if I was in that situation, that would have to be like, you would have to seriously consider this. Is this a livelihood still? Is this something that I can do for a career? Because, everyone wants to work with something that they're passionate about, but we all know that passion doesn't pay bills. So
Yes.
unless you're in a situation, but because I've seen those posts too where people are like, I'm being asked to work for literally nothing and still do the human work of translation or localization.
Yeah.
And that worries me, because if there's going to be some sort of mass exodus of translators, isn't that a huge step back also in the bigger scale of things?
Yeah.
Because we have just started to understand each other and just, and wouldn't that just aid the gaps? Because we're already so divided. And if we suddenly don't even understand each other because the translations aren't accurate.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it is a work.
But thank you for being here. We are gonna continue this triptych of conversation about localization. Thank you, Raisa, for coming to the show. It was great talking to you. Goodbye to you.
Grazie.
Goodbye to everyone.
Thank you.
Prego.
Thank you so much. This was my first podcast and surprisingly painless. I almost said surprisingly painful, but painless.
I feel great about it. Okay, thank you, everyone. See you next time.